My name is Narissa Allen, President and CEO of the Black Business Association of BC. I would first like to acknowledge that we work on the unceded and traditional territory of the Coast Salish people, specifically the Kwantlen, Semiahmoo, Tsawwassen, and Katzie First Nations. Set in the early 1920s and inspired by real events, the Porter follows the friends and families of Black train porters as the death of a fellow porter sends them on starkly different paths to a better life, and on a direct collision course with each other and members of their community. The characters are young, gifted, and Black, from Canada, the Caribbean, and the US, from Montreal to Chicago, and at every stop in between. In a time of extraordinary social and political change, the Porter tells the story of a movement that gave birth to the first Black union in the world. There's so much to unpack in this story. We see themes of community unity, colorism, racism, and entrepreneurship running through the storyline. In just the first 4 episodes, we followed the evolution of a side hustle, the running of a brick and mortar, the management of an enterprise, and the beginning phases of starting a new business, and a rare portrayal of the great Marcus Garvey on primetime TV. And although the story is a period piece, many of the issues addressed parallel with current day issues. The show is masterfully written, produced, cast, and executed, and leaves you wanting more after each episode. The characters are full, realistic, and show the importance of Black stories being told by Black people in order to accurately depict real life. With that, it is my pleasure to introduce our host for the evening, Matt Allen, associate producer and journalist with CBC British Columbia, and with pride and honor, our esteemed guests, Annmarie Morais, showrunner, writer, and executive producer. Anne-Marie's inaugural feature film, How She Moved, was a 2007 Sundance Film Festival Selection and received world release. Her work in television has proved equally noteworthy, writing for such major networks as CBS, SyFy, and Global TV. In 2019, Ms. Morais brought her creative talents to BET's groundbreaking scripted series, American Soul, penning 3 episodes on the life of Don Cornelius and his famed Soul Train empire. Arnold Pinnock is the originator, creator, and an executive producer of The Porter. He also plays Glenford in the series. Arnold was born in the United Kingdom and is a Canadian actor whose career began at Toronto's Second City Mainstage. His work in film and television has spanned almost 3 decades, with over 120 credits to his name, including Exit Wounds, Altered Carbon, and The Parker Andersons. Executive producer and director R.T. Thorne is focused on telling stories that break new ground representing the unrepresented. In 2020, he created Utopia Falls, an award-winning Afrofuturistic young adult science fiction series. Known for his bold visual style and strong sense of story and character, RT has been tapped to direct television for NBC, Universal, the CW, Warner Television, Netflix, Disney, Hulu, and Bell Media. As chair of BIPOC members, a committee for the Directors Guild of Canada, RT is committed to fighting against racism and discrimination while advocating for equality in the entertainment industry. Actor Luc Rodrigue was born in Ottawa to a Trinidadian father and a German mother. From an early age, he took an interest in acting. He attended both Ottawa's Canterbury High School for the Arts and Vancouver's Studio 58 Theatre Training Conservatory. Luc has worked extensively in the Canadian theatre scene and has had recurring roles on ABC's The Crossing, CW's The 100, Freeform Siren, and C on Apple TV. On The Porter, he plays Winchester Barnes, a porter who finds himself warring with deeper desires that threaten to implode every part of his life and love he's fought for. There will be an opportunity at the end of the discussion to ask our panelists some questions. Feel free to drop your comments in the chat box during the session. And to set the stage for this conversation, we will now share an extended trailer from this amazing series. We ask you to use your discretion while watching today. The Porter is intended for audiences aged 14 and up and contains mature subject matter, sexuality, coarse language, and violence.
Junior. first thing. Shoes are important. No scuffs, perfect polish. And when you walk, walk like a man with answers, because whether or not you have them, that's who you have to be.
Zeke, can you make sure that my husband stays out of trouble tonight?
Don't I always?
Do you know who I am?
I know you're in charge.
Of every unholy thing that sets foot in this city.
Queenie, the woman they call the Southside Butcher.
When I hear somebody trying to sell me on a better life, I gotta ask myself, what is so bad about the life they got?
If I wanted to get the Porters into a union, what's the first thing I should do?
Always go for the head.
That's where the vision is.
You think I need a partner?
I think you need a man that knows every vein in them trains.
I know y'all might be scared of what might happen if we do this, but maybe it's time we start thinking about what happens if we don't.
What I offer these boys is not one day, maybe. It is in their hands right now. But this union shit you talking, that's danger. Sure you don't want to work with me?
Sure you don't want to join the movement?
I'm good. I'd rather spend the rest of my life bowing and smiling. People rather spit in my face than killing me would be a kindness.
Knowing when to be a bull-headed Negro motherfucker and when not to be.
I'm a poeta papsi, the most invisible man on the earth.
Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge one more time that CBC British Columbia is an organization historically steered by non-Indigenous people operating on the unceded traditional and ancestral territories of the Tsimshian First Nation here in Prince Rupert. And as an organization that operates in British Columbia, we're also guests on the land of many other First Nations. CBC British Columbia recognizes the governance authorities of these nations for their territories, and we do seek to abide by their protocols and laws. So just to recap here, we're here to discuss The Porter with some cast members and members of the crew and the creative team. Set in the early 1920s and inspired by real events, The Porter, it follows train porters, Junior and Zeke, their friends and families, as a tragedy on the job sets them on starkly different paths to a better life and on a direct collision course with each other. It's an epic drama celebrating Black ambition and achievement. We're 4 episodes in. I think I can speak for everyone who's seen those first 4 episodes that it's been quite a ride so far. The 4th episode is set us up with some really great stuff to come. And I'm thrilled to be joined by some of the cast and creative team behind the series for the discussion of some of those themes, the characters, and the parallels that apply to Black people living in Canada and throughout North America today. Arnold Pinnock, he is the originator and creator of and executive producer of The Porter. We're also joined by showrunner, creator, and executive producer Annmarie Morais. We're also joined by executive producer and director R.T. Thorne, and actor Luke Rodrigue joins us as well. So thank you to you guys for joining us. I am really looking forward to the discussion that we're going to have here. So yes, welcome. Hello.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. Arnold, why don't we start? Let's start at the beginning with you here. I know you've heard this question many times before, but what inspired you to develop and really push this series through?
It is a question that I've been asked quite a few times, but I have I'm always happy to share what empowered me to do it, because I just think it's a story that people should know, and hopefully it empowers them. So for me, I'm originally from Birmingham, England, and coming here with my family. My parents are originally from Jamaica, so they came from Jamaica to England to Canada. And one of the things that I love to do was just find any sort of books or anything that talked about the Canadian Black story, just so that I could read to my parents. And I ended up, finding stuff throughout the many years of being here about Black history, but the one common denominator that kept on coming up was Black porters. And I didn't know anything about these porters other than the fact that the American films, the black and white movies about porters and the depictions that they had towards them. But what really excited me was that I found out that these families and these men and their families, not only from the southern states, but also came from these small little countries in the Caribbean, be it Trinidad, Jamaica, St. Kitts, Barbados, and so on. And they came from these small little islands and came to Canada, and they actually changed policy. They weaved themselves within the very fabric of our flag and joined with their American brethren across this border to fight against disenfranchisement and discrimination, fought to form the first and the largest Black union at the time, the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters.
Yeah, it's an amazing depiction of, to your point, an aspect of Black history in this country that's not elevated the way that it normally is. And I love, RT, if I could ask you a quick question here. And we were talking before we started. What I love are the subtle moments in the episodes that sort of capture that culture and that history and the uniqueness of these people that came over. Can you talk a little bit about that? Why was it important, and how did you manage doing that with this?
I mean, I think that's just in all of us, as Black creators, as Black producers and writers, and directors, and actors. We are telling our stories and our heritage and our culture, and even experiences from our family. They're going to weave itself into our work. It's a given, and that's why it's so vital for Black stories to be told by Black people, because there's a connection to not only the overall story, but to the culture. There's scenes in episode 4 where a couple of our characters, Junior and Zeke, are playing dominoes.
Yeah.
And they're playing dominoes how my dad played dominoes.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, that's directly out of my life. I go down in my out the back door of my house when I'm a kid, and I sit on my dad's lap as he's slamming the dominoes on the table. I mean, that is just part of the Caribbean culture. So it's those little touches that we have pride to put in there, that we want to see, that we never see in other shows or movies when we watch them, that are part of us. It's the essence of us. So it's a vital thing that Black creators and whatnot, we get to tell our stories. You're going to see that culture in it, and you're going to see that pride represented in it. So.
Yeah. Can I tell you what my favorite moment from, and by the way, this is an open conversation, it's a discussion. I'm going to go around and target questions at different people, but if something comes to mind, please feel free to jump in. My favorite moment was, that illustrates that, is when Junior he talked about his grandmother saying, if you can't hear, you must feel, like that is like so spot on. And Annmarie, you're a writer. What was it like, just like throwing some of those ideas around and being like, oh, we've got to get that in there?
I think it's a really rare and wonderful opportunity to sort of tell your story through your voices, or through the voices that you've heard all your life, and all the little sayings and phrases and mannerisms and the way that we are and the way that we slip in and out of our dialects and our slang with certain company and not with others. And so it was all these little choices that we make throughout the series that really make the world feel familiar and alive in a way that we haven't seen on screens in a very, very long time, if at all.
Yeah. And Luke, let's bring you into this as well. In a couple of interviews prior to this, you've mentioned the opportunity, just seeing a character that so reflected your personal experience, and how exciting that was for you, to see that. How affirming was it for you to have an opportunity to play a character like that, who you see so much of yourself in?
Incredible, in one word. I mean, so often as actors, we're not really granted any opportunities other than yes or no, right? Like we're given an audition and then, you know, we can choose to accept the audition, accept the part, or say, no, that's not really for me. And so often in my career, I don't know, you know, when I first saw this character, I realized immediately, just looking at the audition sides, that, you know, he's a walking contradiction, as are all of these characters. And they're not just representing these people as a monolith or an idea of what Black people are, but really allowing them to be fully flushed out human beings. And so to allow myself to be able to play, you know, Trinidadian Canadian man, you know, struggling with internal issues that he doesn't necessarily fit into the modern day society, you know, immediately that I jumped at the opportunity.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess if I could just open it up to everyone here, and RT, you kind of flicked at it before. How important is it to have Black people, Black actors, creators, directors, from inception to production, having a seat at the table to shape something like this and tell it accurately, you know, and authentically? It's open to anybody.
I think Annmarie, you should take
it. I think, you know, we can tell we're not by any means the first Black creative team to bring stories like this to the screen, big or small. We came here because we caught a glimpse of others who are sort of clearing paths for us, and you know, we tipped to our Clement Virgos and our Jennifer Holness and our Claire Prietos and Seth Sutherland and you know, Stephen Williams, and people who really went unsung on both sides of the border, who were just telling our stories in small ways. So to be able to assemble a team with greater agency in all these levels of production is really meaningful. It's a meaningful journey in our industry, but it's still progressing. It is still not to the place where we are necessarily those who can kind of greenlight the finance and do from root to stem, you know, all the things that we want. But I think we take progress in stages, and we're very proud of these stages, to have a team, to have Arnold and his partner Bruce sort of bring this opportunity our way and allow so many different sides of the coin to just participate and shine in the ways that they do. It's a tremendous gift, and it's something that needs to continue on its journey, so the next wave can really be completely in control of their narrative.
I think it's vital too that, you know, I think all of us, and this goes for almost any industry, you know, where you do not see Black faces, whether it be in business and science, education, or the entertainment industry. All of these industries, we all become inspired by seeing others like us doing those things. I mean, that is an absolute reality for me. You know, I got into this industry because I saw, you know, the Spike Lees, and I saw, you know, even I started in music videos. I saw Little X, you know, Director X, you know what I mean? And to see these people who come from the places that I come from, and to see them excelling, it inspires. And it, you know, the beautiful thing about entertainment is it's this window into a world that you can dream, and it inspires like nothing else. You know, it's an emotional experience that is transcendent. So, you know, it's vital that you know, Black writers and creators and producers are seen doing these things to inspire our next generation to elevate the craft, to move forward, and again, like Annmarie said, to have the agency, you know, to step into the agency that they deserve, to tell the stories that they know are valuable to their community. So it's vital for this type of thing to always continue. I'm just happy to be part of that.
Oh, sorry, Luke, were you gonna add something there? I thought I saw.
Yeah, I think I will. I mean, I was just jumping on the community train there, that like, I believe that storytelling and art is a communal effort, whether it's theater, whether it's filmmaking, whatever it may be. And stepping onto this set, even before stepping onto this set, stepping into the audition room, or just stepping into the room when we all got together on the first day, I recognized immediately that this was a community that I loved and understood, and that we we're all working towards a common goal. Stepping into that room on the first day and seeing Jordan, I was like, oh shoot, our DOP's got a do-rag on his head and a Leica around his neck. Like, okay, I feel immediately at home, and that we're all, we all have common understandings, common experiences, and we're working towards a common goal. And it's not often that I felt that on television sets, and to step into that was just so affirming, and allowed a real safe space to create and explore.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Arnold, I want to ask you this next question, because the spirit of entrepreneurship is it's very evident in the first 4 episodes. Like, these guys are hustlers, right? And I don't mean that in a negative sense. Like, a hustler, for all intents and purposes, somebody doesn't have the tools that you necessarily say, they don't have the money or whatever, but they find a way to make it work, right? And I think that exemplifies Junior and Zeke in their endeavors, and everybody really. Why was it? So this is sort of a two-parter. Why was it so important to highlight that aspect of Black enterprise and ingenuity through this series, first of all?
I think for me, it just goes back to who we are in the sense of our ancestors, in the sense of at least my parents or grandparents. You go to something as simple as my mom was a nurse. So in order for us to buy a home, even my mother's income and my father's income wasn't enough. So my mom would do this thing called PORTER. So, all the people at the place where she was working at the hospital, they'd all put in money, and then every month someone else would get that lump sum of money, and some people would buy a car, and other people could use that as a down payment on a house. So exactly what you were saying, in the sense is, some people may think of, when we say the word hustle, of what Junior's doing, that same aspect is how large alcohol companies became big. Selling liquor to the Americans during Prohibition. But when this brother's doing it, it can so-called be seen as a criminal act. But the reality of it is that we grow up in the mindset, I know us, at least Caribbean people, at least grow up in the sense of like, we do what we have to have. We do what we have to do. Like, there's the old joke of how many jobs does a Jamaican have? You know what I mean? It's that old joke, but the reality of it is as many as possibly that you need to feed your family, buy a house, and provide. And I think for me, Junior, Zeke, Marlene, Lucy, Faye, Queenie, they're all doing their thing. They're with what they're being dealt with, the hand that they're being dealt with, they're taking it and manipulating it, or changing it into something, and harvesting it into fruit. And that, to me, is something my grandmother did, my mother did, my grandfather, and so on and so on. So I think, once again, it's a great window into showcasing through this dramatic series who we are. And may I add, I think that is also an immigrant story across the board. No matter where where you come from in this world, when you come to Canada or North America, I mean, we could talk about Greek stories, Italian stories, the Asian story. We can talk about all those stories, and they've always managed to take what little has been given to them and turn it into something bigger than that. So, hope that answers the first part of your question.
No, it was great. It was great. And the second bit is creating a series, a movie, a film that in and of itself is an entrepreneurial act, right? And there's been a lot put out there, and this is open again for everybody. But Arnold, I want to start with you. A lot have been put out there about just what it took to get this series made. Talk a little bit about that process and sort of like, you know, the struggle that comes along with trying to get a vision and turn it into something that's real, that you can see and touch and all of that stuff. What was that process like for you? And same question for everybody else here.
Well, I think, you know, you're looking at, you know, 4 of us here, including yourself. And we all know to get where we are, we've had to go through trials and tribulations and knock down a few walls. You know, I'm sure it's been that same way for you at CBC. But I always think of all those lumps and those hits. I kind of think of them as stuff that's got me prepared and got me ready to be able to tell this story. Yeah, there were definitely some hardships, there's no doubt about it. But every one of those no's that I ran into were meant to happen so that we would find ourselves in the right place with CBC, with Sienna, Jennifer Kawaja, with, you know, Ian Dimmerman in Winnipeg, and with BET. I mean, every time that I thought I was running into a brick wall, I thought of the Porters. And I thought, okay, wait a minute. So these guys are dealing with, you know, the disenfranchisement and the discrimination and hardships that they're going through. So every single time that I thought, man, I can't move another inch with this show, I just thought of what they went through and the men and women of these neighborhoods. And that's what empowered me and instilled me. And the more I learned about them is the more empowering I felt to want to tell these stories. And please remember, the story that we're telling about the Porters, Black Cross nurses, and all these individuals is such a small aspect of the Canadian Black story. They're so much bigger than what we're uncovering. So I hope that answers it. I mean, yeah, there's been hardships and so on and so on, but, you know, I just kind of think of it as we grow up being told that we have to work 200 times harder. Everybody knows that terminology. When we talk to Black people, it's just like, oh yeah, that's right. So I think of it in the sense that I was prepped and ready to take on this challenge with Bruce Ramsey, my co-creator and writer. We were ready to take on this challenge. Even Bruce would even say, you remember sometimes Bruce would go, okay, I got to take on this mantra of working 200 times harder. You know, Bruce would go, you know, I didn't really think about it. You know, I was like, hey man, it's just a normal thing, man. So.
RT, Annmarie, Luke, you guys are all entrepreneurs in your own right.
I think when we think about it, sort of this series or a series of by you know, Black creatives or BIPOC creatives, it's still an industry, it's still a business. And for a long time, we were told that, you know, our stories didn't sell and they weren't, so therefore they weren't sound investments, you know, in our industry. And in our years of development, I remember one of the sort of very special memories was sort of trying to get all our work done so we as a writing room could go and go see Black Panther together. And we dressed well and we stepped into this theater full of like the sharpest looking moviegoers you ever saw and felt this swell of pride, not just at the product itself, but seeing those numbers, seeing that box office come in as proof that it is not, you know, the culture is not the barrier to entrepreneurial success. So it became sort of this ceiling breaker for us in terms of what is possible. You can no longer tell us that our stories are not profitable and cannot be profitable. So we actually just need room at the table and access to the streams of revenue that allow us to create and to build and to do those things. So it's still important to remember that, yes, we are making something for our community and we are celebrating that as artists, but it's still viewed as a product. And we are more than able to make a successful product that will bring in audiences beyond the BIPOC community as well. So I think that's something we've always seemed to be out to prove, that it's proven time and time again. So we're just continuing to really just trying to push that mandate. So someone doesn't feel the need that they have to prove it because there's a history of success behind these entrepreneurial endeavors in our creative community.
I always found it funny when, you know, when people would say those kinds of things about our stories, you know, oh, they don't sell, they don't travel, you know, they don't do well in these markets. And it, you know, it struck me, you know, early on in my career, it's like, you're not saying fact, you're saying opinion.
Yeah.
And it's your opinion and it's your experience of not being able to sell or you know, put these shows out. It's your failure. The people who are telling you the no's, it's their failure at not being able to properly promote and market and put these things together. It is not the failure, like, you know, like both Annmarie and Arnold are saying, of the culture. It's that you don't know how to handle it, and you're not teaming with people who are of the culture who can advise, and you're not taking that advice, you know. So and that's been proven wrong, you know, not only with something like a Black Panther, but like, you know, like I said earlier, my career was hip hop music. You know, I started my career. I am a hustler. You know, I've been a hustler my whole life. You know, hustling down artists to let me shoot videos for them. You know, without anything, but understanding that the culture speaks, and you know, hip hop is you know, the greatest cultural force in music across this planet, and it has been for the past 20 years. So it's proof positive, you know, our culture, our stories, our storytelling, it sells. It just needs to be done the right way. And it's high time that, you know, so-called gatekeepers not only invite us in, let us have a seat at the table, but, you know, let us run the table for a little bit too.
Luke, I'm gonna direct this this next question at you. One of the things that you can see with the Porters is that camaraderie that they have, and it's like, you know, forming a union. The idea of it is together we have more power because the company needs us, right? And talking about Black business, Black entrepreneurship in today's world, how important is unity in the Black community in being able to tackle some of these systemic issues that we've talked about, and sort of giving opportunities and such?
That's a big question. I think it's paramount. You know, I've always been a supporter of unionization. I've always been a supporter of the power of people. You know, be they Black, white, any other group of people, humanity as a whole. I think we need to come together much more and add many more social aspects to our community to really live in a healthy, sustainable, prosperous way. And, you know, maybe this answers this question and kind of piggybacks on the last one, but I truly have felt, as an actor at least, stepping into a show like this, that maybe this show can actually be a bit of a turning point. Because 10 years ago, hell, even 5 years ago, I didn't believe that a show like this could exist in Canada, much less that I could be a part of it. And to be stepping into it and realize that it's a reality. Once I realized the power of people coming together as a force and working together towards a common goal, I realized that it is possible and that we can continue this with, you know, every next season that CBC produces, you know. I think if people would just, you know, open their eyes, open their blinders a little bit to all the other stories that are around, you know, not only would it be profitable, but it would benefit everyone because there are so many incredible stories to be told. And when we come together as a group of individuals to tell them together as a whole collective, I think it's incredibly important. Yeah.
Matthew, can I add to that? If you think of what it took to get this show going forward, in the sense of, you know, the people you see in front of you, you know, the Annmaries, the RTs, and the people you don't see, the Marcia Greens, the Charles officers, as well as, you know, the Jennifer Kawajas and the Ian Dimmermans and the other people that I've mentioned, but in the sense of bringing all of these Black entities together. That's what it took to get a show like this off the ground. And then if you think about the origin of this show in the sense of Black Canadians and Black Americans, as well as the foundation of this union, which were Black women, came across the border to shake hands in order to form this union. And then on top of that, you think of what Luke is saying. When you're on set and you've got over 150 or whatever background performers, and some of them are young kids, some of them are women, some of them are girls, some of them women, some of them men, some of them are boys, and they're looking up, and sometimes it's their first times on set, and they're seeing the RTs, and they're seeing the Annmaries and the Marsha Greens and the Charleses of the world, and you talk about the domino effect. In their minds, I can't speak for them, but you've got to think. I took some pictures on set, and you can see them looking at them with wonderment and curiosity. And I think if we have done anything, at least in Winnipeg, maybe we have been able to spark that interest that maybe that's what I want to do. And when you say about, you know, business and entrepreneur and stuff like that, maybe we sparked the future RTs and the future Anne-Maries and the future Charles officers of Canada just with what we did last summer.
Yes, I 100% agree, and I think it's the case in any industry, any profession. Just, you know, we've said it a bunch of times, seeing examples of yourself, it at least illuminates a path, right? Which I think is key. Sorry, I thought I heard an inhale from somebody about to say something. Now, Annmarie, a lot has been said about how characters really feel multi-dimensional, and it shows just the wide range, the pain, the losses, the victories. Narissa mentioned the colorism. Like there's some subtle stuff going on in some of these episodes that opens a window into the Black experience, which, again, pardon the pun, isn't so black and white. Could you talk a little bit about that and how you try to be authentic and accurate with some of those things that, if you're not from the Black community or otherwise, you might not understand quite that well?
Right. I think we had a very unique experience with the first season writers' room, where it was an all Black team. And what is pretty exceptional about that experience is that we come, the majority of us, not all of us, from the experience where we were the only or the other. We represented. For myself, sometimes I was the only woman and definitely usually the only person of color. So you felt a bit boxed in terms of being able to speak freely about what was relevant and personal to you. So what was unique about this is we're together. This is a team of amazing, and big shout out to all the writers on our first season. There's not one collective. There's not one singular Black experience. And so when we're creating this series and really putting some blood into the veins of these characters on the page, is that we're taking parts of all our stories. There's not one way to kind of walk through this life and really question whether the choices are right or wrong, or, you know, controversial in the case of some of our actions by our young, aspiring Lucy Conrad, but we all have these moments that are collectively shared in different ways. The border scene of yesterday's episode, everyone in the room had a border story, had an encounter at the border that was uncomfortable or just berating or belittling, or somehow someone tried to diminish you in a certain way. For me, myself personally, there was a long time when dark skin and curly hair, natural hair was not the thing. And so a lot of the series we wanted to focus not just on the issues between white and Black and sort of racial equality in that way, but we have our own lives and stories and struggles in and amongst ourselves, and
always kind to each other.
all of those things. We wanted to get all of those parts of this community to live and to breathe and to have those discussions about the things that we don't usually discuss amongst ourselves. It's important.
What do you hope, and this is just a general question to everybody, to the, because I think we mentioned that the majority of people who watch the show may not be Black. To somebody who's sort of getting an introduction to this history from the outside looking in, what are you hoping that they get from watching this series? And that's open. That's a question that's open to everybody.
Curiosity. Curiosity about our collective history, curiosity about themselves and where they fit within that history, curiosity about how we move forward.
Yeah, I think there's it's so interesting. You know, that for so many years, for all of our lives, we have basically witnessed stories that did not feature us and still found ways to connect with and engage in and be inspired or encouraged by those stories. And I think the same applies. I think humanity is humanity. We've all felt insecure. We've all felt sort of like we faced the giant of impossibility at one point. We question our relationships, our loves, our desires. I think that lives and breathes, and that's universal. So I hope that those who are watching the series who may not have had the experience in terms of our civil rights story, that they are connecting to parts and portions of these people that you attach to and that you are upset with and love with, angry at, all the feelings that you find parts of your story. And for me, if nothing else, you can take away the fact that, listen, these young and not so young immigrants came and saw what the world said was impossible and decided it was not. And I think every day that I face a situation that seems like it is impossible, I am just encouraged by their example, and that you can take that as your example as well.
I'd say like I that's extremely well said, Annmarie. I'm like, I can't top that. But what I can say is that I hope that it inspires everybody who watches the series to go, you know, at the very least, go Google something after an episode, you know, find out about some of the people or the characters or the events that are depicted. You know, go try to find a book to read about this history that you were not taught in high school. I was not taught this in high school, and I know a lot of people haven't been. So, you know, I really hope that it inspires them to go and try to find the stories of, you know, the marginalized and the people who they haven't heard of, and rediscover, the wonderful things that a lot of these communities have done and contributed in this country. I think, you know, just working on the show inspired me greatly. You know, and I hope that it does that for others, and so that they can really start to understand all of the things that have made up this country, all of the stories, all of the people that have made up this country. That's what I hope.
I really hope that everyone is entertained. I hope people are laughing, smiling, getting up and dancing. I hope people are upset, angry, you know, as my mom would say, don't go in that door. Don't, you know, you know, I hope all of that is happening. And to echo with what RT and Marie saying, I really also hope it inspires people to want to find out, hey, did that really happen, or how it happened? Because it is a dramatized show about history, and a perfect example of that is Luke. You know, finding out about his uncle. You know, being a porter, And I think it's really exciting. I remember one time I was talking to this one lady, and her son was kind of like auditioning some dancing stuff for us that, we were looking at earlier on. And she said, you know what? I didn't know the story of the porter so much. She goes, I've never told my son that his grandfather was a porter. And I asked why. And she said, well, we were kind of ashamed of it. And I love the fact that we get to showcase that these men and the women that were right alongside them, that we turn that narrative of what it was perceived in those old movies from the United States and realize that these men and women bonding together, formed, were the seedlings of the civil rights movement, and how we should be proud of them, and how that narrative should be changed. And I never ever forgot that she felt. But I will tell you, after talking to her, it flipped, and she was sharing stories about her grandfather. And ever since this show has started, I know I've met so many people that family members of porters. Hey, Annmarie, RT, all of us, man. We've all had some sort of connection where someone's talking about their father. What I would love to hear is about grandmothers and great grandmothers that were Black Cross nurses. I want to hear those stories. I haven't heard them yet. I'm really excited to hear about those sort of stories.
I gotta say, I just want to double down on what you're saying there, Arnold. I think it's vital, and it kind of goes in conjunction with like the sort of the first question of like why it's important for Black storytellers to tell these stories. It's just like it is vital that the impressions and the narratives that are sort of like kind of hardwired into some of our minds are changed, and we have to really question who's telling that narrative. You know what I'm saying? History is told by the victors, That's why we don't appear in a lot of those history books. So it's very important, and that goes for anybody. You're trying to blaze your own path. You can be an entrepreneur, you can be a hustler, all of that. It's a path of ambition, but you must not believe wholeheartedly what has been told to you. It's when you get told and know that that's not valuable, that what you have for the world is not valuable, you have to be the author who's going to rewrite that narrative. And these people did this, these events happened, and these people did this for their communities, and they paved the way for all of us to actually participate in all the industries that we move forward with, because they formed this union. So it's vital for us and anybody moving forward to question those narratives, rewrite them with your own path. And so.
RT, you hijacked what was going to be another question of mine. I was going to quote something. I was going to quote something back to you. You said this in a previous interview. You said that the series was not intended just to put a spotlight on some of the racist elements of Canada's past, which, by the way, I think is something that you appreciate it when people are like, Canada was racist too, but that border scene and just the way people were treated, it kind of highlights it. So you said it's not just meant to highlight some of the racist elements of Canada's past, but it's also meant to highlight the significant achievement of Black Canadians historically. And I think you summed that up so well. I think we've got a question. It's, by the way, to our viewers, we've got about 5 or 6 minutes here to open this up to questions from our viewers. There's one right here. To everybody, what's next for Black storytelling in Canadian film?
Wow.
Everything.
Yeah.
Exactly. We want to see, Black future stories, Black present stories, Black love stories, Black family stories,
Black horror stories.
We want to see, everything. Like Annmarie says, the Black experience is not one experience. We want to see every type of experience possible, I believe. There's an audience for everything.
That question was from who's that question from? It was from and please forgive me if I mispronounce your name. Clavia Elaine. Thank you so much for that. Nikki asks, what do you think it will take to help change the mindset of people to see the value in this kind of storytelling?
Come out and watch the show.
Yeah.
Real. That's real.
The work will change their minds, you know?
Come out and watch this show in the thousands. That will do it. Tell your friends.
Yeah, represent. Show up in those theaters. Show up in those in front of your television and talk about it. You know, that's vital.
We don't have any more questions, but I just wanted to follow up on when we said what's next for Black storytelling in Canadian film. And Arnold, you kind of touched on it a little bit, just asking for stories about the Black nurses. There are so many. This is scratching the surface. There's so much out there.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's some great stories, you know, historical and present day out of British Columbia, which I would love to talk about, or Alberta, or, you know, obviously Africville, like you name the province, we can talk about it. There's just so many. And someone just sent me a sports one today about a famous Black female sprinter that I was like, what? Like, I didn't know about it. And I think that's the thing that really empowers me, is just the fact that uncovering these stories or being showcased, these stories, it's just, you want to share them, man. You want to, I don't know, you want to get on a bullhorn and whatever the medium is and just share them. It just excites me and puts a smile on my face.
I think what I'm excited about in terms of the future of Black storytelling is just seeing the spaces that weren't usually occupied by BIPOC people, you know, whether that's wardrobe, FX, editing, post-production, sound, animation. I think there's so many arenas that we didn't know were available. So it's like, whether or not you are telling the stories, you know, front and center, that reflects, you know, people that look like us, or whether or not you are the creative that's putting stories. Like I'm happy on all sides. So, you know, sometimes I do a rewind if I walk by and I see an editor of color and sort of like, what's going on? Hey, hi, how are you? Good to see you. Like, I never see, you want to stop and just encourage people to pursue these avenues that, you know, that a lot of us didn't know existed till we were in the game. So I'm excited for that, in terms of seeing just a wave of different faces jumping into this industry on all sides.
This question comes from Natasha. Are there any known stories about the Black elite in Canada? A few American authors chronicle this. It would be nice to hear a Canadian perspective.
The elite?
That's a good question.
The elite, the Black elite.
Define elite.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get at. I mean, these brothers and sisters, the story that we're telling, they allowed us to have a Black middle class, and I consider them elite. That's how we get our Oscar Petersons, our Lincoln Alexanders, you know, that's where we get all those people. John Ware coming out of Alberta, as a Black cowboy, elite to me. You know, I could go on and on and on. I mean, I really need to know what that elite is, and I think speaking on behalf of all of us, we put that question mark on. Oh, you know what?
Sure.
Right in front of you, I consider these three elites. You know what I mean? So it's like, defined elite, man.
Yeah. One Natasha had down was the bourgeoisie, affluent families that were part of the 1%.
It's interesting because I'm in the midst of the team with season 2, and there will be zero spoilers, but there's been a few characters who I thought, oh, this is interesting, and this position, celebrated across the world, was like living, functioning, working out of this community. So it was like you're discovering these people of worldwide recognition chose to be in this community. So I would say there are those stories to tell, and we're gonna be like we'll dip our toes in that water, but that's all you're getting from me.
Fair enough.
So Viola Desmond is the story I'd love to tell, because we talk about the incident, but we don't talk about the fact that she was a successful woman in the hair and makeup industry, based on Madam C.J. Walker's industry coming out of Harlem. No one talks about that aspect of her life. We talk about the actual incident that what happened in the theater, but she was a successful Black woman driving around in her own expensive car.
Fantastic. I think we've got time for one more. Is there, this comes from Vicky. Is there any mentorship or internship offered through the show to train or provide experience for the next generation, especially in writing or producing, to keep this positive movement going? We've only got about a minute and a half here, so we got to address this one quickly.
RT.
We're constantly seeking for to have people be part of our crew. We did a lot of we drew from the community in Winnipeg, to pull together people who are part of our crew and our team. So there is that kind of thing. The unfortunate thing is that we shot in Winnipeg. We had to draw from just in Winnipeg. So fortunate for all the people in Winnipeg, maybe not so fortunate for the people who are in, other provinces that want to come in and jump in. But yes, the short answer is we do seek out and try to mentor the next generation of people who want to be in this industry, for sure.
Well, thank you for those thoughts, RT. We are officially out of time. That hour went by way too quickly. But on behalf of CBC, the Black Business Association of BC, I want to thank our panelists. Wonderful conversation, really wonderful to have you all on, sharing your thoughts. Arnold Pinnock, Annmarie Morais, RT Thorne, and Luc Rodrigue. Great conversation. Thank you all to the viewers at home for joining in. For those of you who submitted questions, we really appreciated it. Check out The Porter, guys. It airs Monday at 9 p.m. on CBC. Is also available to stream on CBC Gem. Tell your friends, tell everyone, watch, learn, be enlightened, be inspired, all of those good things. We appreciate it. Have a great night. Thank you very much.